Is Canada's international reputation to be that of a haven for the current crop of credibly accused war criminals? Here's a phrase that seems to be bouncing around pretty quickly, taking on a life of its own: the Calgary Principles. Whatever happens with the Crown's trial, Calgary will be the site of a people's process aimed at delivering some measure of justice in a world too often starved of it. Among those who've agreed to take part in both the Crown's and the people's processes are Ramsey Clark and Cynthia McKinney. A former Attorney General of the United States, Ramsey Clark has a long history of representing Splitting the Sky as his lawyer. This history began when prominent figures in the United States intervened to cover up the lies and crimes of the Attica prison debacle of 1971. You ever seen that scene in Dog Day Afternoon when Al Pacino, he's got hostages, he goes out in the street, and the media are there, he's surrounded by police, and he becomes a kind of working class hero, he becomes a popular hero, and he shouts out one word to the crowd assembled, and that word is Attica. That word Attica became a symbol of the upsurge of the underclass. And the whole history of this Attica situation and the cover-up that took place, and the fact that all the guards who murdered Splitting the Sky's fellow prisoners never had to face consequences for those actions, and yet 19-year-old John Boncourt, his life was changed forever. The event changed Splitting the Sky's life forever. In the election of 2008, Cynthia McKinney ran as the Green Party's candidate. She's widely recognized as the inheritor of the quest for domestic and international justice, advanced in different ways by both Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X. And I did get a chance to spend a good amount of time with her in Paris recently at Vers la Vérité, the Truthers, or the Reopenists, as they call themselves in France. And there she was. Ms. McKinney served for 4 terms as a U.S. Congresswoman representing a constituency in Georgia. She stood bravely for the principle that universal human rights extend to Palestinian people. With her words and actions, Ms. McKinney epitomizes the necessary merger of the global anti-war coalition and the international movement of those committed to the movement, to the quest for 9/11 truth. What really happened on September 11th, 2001? What do we have to do to get an honest investigation? In Canada, many countries around the world, it was quite powerful in Paris to see how this idea is spreading, how the idea that, yes, we deal with lies all the time, but some lies are, and this set of lies are set on such an enormous scale with such huge consequences that we just cannot let this one pass. In order to stop the otherwise never-ending 9/11 wars, the 9/11 wars, the 9/11 wars! 9/11 wars! We must make reason and science prevail over fear, fear-mongering, superstition, and disinformation. We're going into the dark ages in determining who is really responsible for the originating acts of the global war on terror. Woo! Calm down. Okay, take it. Cerebro. Not too much more. Cerebro. All right.
Wants more water?
I propose that the convergence of events and personalities, character and circumstances on the frontiers of so much contested power, and I mean Calgary, offers an important opening to a new era of juridical development. I propose that the trial of Splitting the Sky presents a platform for the elaboration of a new set of juridical rules and protocols to be known as the Calgary Principles. It's been 6 decades since the UN General Assembly agreed to a succinct refinement of the principles that emerged from the trial of some of the top Nazis, as well as their juridical, medical, industrialists, and industrialist accomplices. During those decades, there's been an intensification of the culture of impunity that immunizes those at the top of the hierarchy of wealth and power from any legal accountability for their crimes. Like the Tokyo trials of the defeated leadership of Imperial Japan, the Nuremberg trials were a classic example of victor's justice. Victor's justice. The trend that began in the aftermath of the Second World War has never been preempted. Again and again, only those on the losing side of international conflicts face legal consequences for their crimes. Even the International Tribunal dealing with the Rwandan genocide of 1994 restricts its proceedings to dealing with the crimes of only one side in the conflict. Only Hutus are targeted for prosecution. The jurists empowered by the UN Security Council consistently veer away from any reckoning with the many serious crimes of Paul Kagame's Tutsi-dominated Rwandan Patriotic Front. With Anglo-American banking channeled through Uganda, the Tutsi-dominated military force conquered its externally manipulated foes to become the core unit of the Rwandan armed forces. Kagame's army was built up to become a key pillar of the Central African branch of the American Empire. Robin Philpott wrote an early book on this, and this issue is very alive in Quebec because, of course, French-speaking polity here, and there's much connection with Rwanda. And Philpott, who wrote about Oka, Le Dernier Alibi de Canada Anglais, has been an early truth teller on what has gone on in and around what in 1994 was this genocide, but the genocide continues in the Eastern Congo. This empire includes many Canadian mining companies, including Barrick Gold. Mulrooney was on the board of Barrick Gold. George Herbert Walker Bush Sr. was on the board of Barrick Gold, that operates with warlord and child soldier protection in one of the most war-torn zones on the planet. The immunity from prosecution of President Kagame's Tutsi-dominated army contributes significantly to the ongoing genocide that plagues the people of the resource-rich Eastern Congo to this day. The inflicted deaths of millions of displaced and brutalized Congolese clears the way for illicit flows of blood diamonds, coltan, and gold, and soon oil. These operations that expose the utter ruthlessness of imperial capital's heart of darkness epitomize the severity of the enforced lawlessness that enriches a few at the lethal expense of the many. The inequities of victor's justice were on full display last March 17th when the police decided to protect a credibly accused war criminal, George W. Bush, and to arrest and incarcerate Splitting the Sky. For many months, key venues of mainstream media have been advertising KSM as the so-called mastermind of the 9/11 attacks. After having been tortured dozens of times in U.S. custody, the demented KSM apparently agrees with the label given him, even as he boasts outlandishly of the role he has imagined for himself in many more alleged terrorist incidents. For millions of observers who do not accept the official conspiracy theory of 9/11, KSM and those who will be tried with him are obvious patsies. KSM's own history of double, triple, and quadruple dealing illustrates that the history of Al-Qaeda was internal and remains internal to that of the national security state. The operatives of the national security state once did their complex business transactions